Good evening and welcome to tonight's City Council meeting. We begin City Council meeting, as always, with a prayer and a pledge. If you so feel to join me in prayer, please bow your head. Gracious Father, we thank you for the opportunity we have to serve the citizens of Saginaw. We ask you to be with us during our deliberation. We also ask you to be with our citizens, our public safety officers, and our city workers. Keep them in your will. We ask this in your name. Amen. I pledge allegiance Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Councilmember Millen. Here. Councilmember Tibbs is excused. Councilmember Bench is excused. Mayor Pro Tem Clark. Councilmember Moore. Councilmember Bryant. Councilmember Balls. Councilmember Humphreys. Here. Mayor Browning. Here. We have 7 members present, 2 absent.
Very good. I remind the audience, this is a good time to check your electronic devices, make sure that they're turned down, or that do not interfere with our council meeting. Appreciate that. And with that, Madam Clerk, announcements.
Thank you. To let everyone know that the city has acquired new election equipment, which was funded by a grant. An open house will be held next week on Tuesday, June 12th, and Wednesday, June 13th, in council chambers from 5 o'clock until 8 o'clock p.m. The open house will feature interactive demonstrations so that you can have some hands-on experience with the new equipment and be familiar with it before the August 7th election. The November 6th ballot will have 3 Saginaw Public School Board positions on it. School board candidates must file at the city clerk's office on or before July 24th at 4 o'clock p.m. And also on the November 6th ballot will be 4 council member positions. Information petitions and affidavit of identity forms are available at the clerk's office during regular business hours. Council candidates must file at the city clerk's office on or before August 7th at 5 o'clock p.m. Mayor, we do have a proclamation tonight, and it's recognizing the 150th anniversary of the YMCA.
Okay, and I would like to call Mr. Steve Myers up to the podium, please. Thank you for being here, Mr. Myers. Let me read this proclamation. Whereas the Young Men's Christian Association, also known as the YMCA, opened its doors in Saginaw on June 25th, 1868. With a total of 20 members. While the YMCA has changed locations a few times in its 150-year history, it's found its current home at 1915 Fordney in the late 1950s. And whereas for 150 years, the YMCA of Saginaw has strengthened the foundation of our community through programs that foster youth development, healthy living, and social responsibility. The YMCA believes in diversity and inclusion and prides itself on the members who walk through its doors every day. And whereas the YMCA's journey over the past 150 years has impacted the lives of many with stories of health gains, confident growth, reduced isolation, and an increased sense of belonging. And whereas the YMCA of Saginaw annually raises over $250,000 that is given back to the community in a variety of ways. This includes funding Y memberships for youth, families, and seniors, the Mission Nutrition Program, and giving an opportunity to experience Camp Timbers and participate in a premier summer camp experience. And whereas today's mission of the YMCA of Saginaw is to be an association of all people with programs that enrich the spirit, mind, and body. For the past 150 years, the YMCA of Saginaw has truly made a difference in our community, serving to strengthen, educate, assist, and empower. Now, therefore, be it resolved, I, Dennis D. Browning, Mayor of the City of Saginaw, on behalf of my fellow council members, do recognize the YMCA of Saginaw on the honorable occasion of its 150th anniversary and encourage Saginaw residents and businesses to participate in the YMCA's programs and events held throughout the year, and thank them for being such a valuable part of Saginaw's community. In witness hereof, I hereunto set my hand and cause the seal of the city of Saginaw to be affixed this 4th day of June in the year of our Lord 2018. Signed, Dennis D. Browning, Mayor. Also, Floyd Clark, Mayor Pro Tem. Council members Michael D. Balls, Annie Bench, Clint Bryant, John Humphreys, John Milne, Brenda F. Moore, and Damon L. Tibbs, and our city manager, Mr. Timothy Morales. Congratulations. You want to come forward, please?
Thank you. First of all, I feel right at home, and a meeting at the Y begins with a prayer and the pledge, and then the way that you said, we're here to serve the citizens of the community, and so is the Y. And the reason why we've been around 150 years, it's hard to put 150 years, as you can imagine, into just a few minutes, but I'll be brief. It's been a really exciting year for us. Recognition like this, it's certainly celebration worthy, and we've heard now from the mayor's office and all the way up to the state governor's office and our state representatives and senators. It's been very, very humbling and very exciting. I'm a steward and I'm a servant of the Y, and it's a great honor, and I recognize the responsibility that comes with maintaining the legacy of service that our Y has had in this community for 150 years and 60 years at our present location. Just a couple of highlights in this big milestone year for us. As a lot of you know, we're amidst a $4.1 million capital campaign in partnership with the Boys and Girls Club. It's called Kids Campus. And just yesterday, in fact, another milestone, we had a ribbon cutting at our Camp Timbers facility up in West Branch, where we've completed our renovations and enhancements there. We've completed 50 years of Camp Timbers, and a lot of you know that program and facility well also. And Boys and Girls Club, as you know, have moved into the former Junior Achievement Building. In fact, the renovations will be complete in about a week, and they'll get moved right in there as their new permanent Saginaw home and location. And then we'll start some improvements at the Y, and our Kids Campus campaign project will be done. Those are the great things that I wanted to let you know about. The other thing is just a brief mention, we are later on the agenda, in the consent agenda, seeking a permit for banners along Forney Street. The city did a remarkable job. It's really a model for a streetscape makeover. It was done four or 5 years ago now. And those lampposts were designed to hold these great banners. There have not been banners up there yet in that time, and we wanted to be first. So the two things, and we have a design in the works already for the 150th logo for the YMCA, for half the banners on Forney Street, and then the Kids Campus logo as we open up the new facilities there on our Forney Street Youth Development Campus. So I appreciate your consideration of that, and I'm told we're production ready as soon as we get the blessing from all of you, and it'll be very festive down on our block this summer. Okay, thank you very much.
Mayor, our next item is personal appearances.
As we begin tonight's business, we welcome your thoughts and input. If you come to the podium, please introduce yourself and state your home address. To be helpful, let us know if you are speaking solely or on behalf of a group. All speakers will have a 3-minute limit, which is limited by the clerk, so be sure to cover your main points. Hearing from the citizens we represent is very important to us. We ask that you speak slowly and clearly so that we don't miss what you have to say. Finally, since you are speaking as a representative of all our citizens, we ask you to be courteous and respectful to the members of the public present, to the citizens watching SGTV, and to this council so that we can give serious consideration to your concerns. All follow-ups will be referred to city staff. Madam Clerk?
Our first speaker is Jonathan Hartwick. I do not see Jonathan. Our next speaker is Joe LaPrena. Do not see Joe. Next speaker is Debbie Melkonian. I see Debbie.
Good evening, or afternoon. My name is Debbie Melkonian. I'm the president of the Adams Boulevard Neighborhood Association, and I am speaking this evening on behalf of Go High, Get Outside for a Healthy Inside, as well as the newly reorganized Southeast Neighborhood Association, which is also the Southeast Wicks Park Neighborhood Association. Go High hasn't gone away. We haven't made any public appearances at this point, but we wanted to give you a sort of an update on what's been going on at Wicks Park and some of the progress that we're about to make depending on some changes that need to be made. There are 15 plus residents which attend the Southeast Neighborhood Association meetings twice a month. They're held at the Samaritan Center, and they now have an executive board with a president, vice president, and secretary. There's been a massive cleanup done at Wicks Park, which involved many residents as well as students during a cleanup campaign 2 weeks ago. Several grants have been written to revitalize Wicks Park. A private donor has offered to resurface the basketball courts area free of charge. New playground equipment has been identified to add to the recreational area for both children and adults. We've met with Bruce Carradine, facilities administrator, through Phil Carwatt's office to look at the current play structures which have been in the park for several decades. Some of this equipment can be moved to other areas of the park away from the basketball courts, which we feel possibly some of the language that's used on a basketball court could sometimes be inappropriate next to a playground facility. Portable restrooms have been also looked at in terms of placing them in the park area. We've run into a few roadblocks when completing the Adopt a Park application. We were unaware of the many legal qualifications involved when applying for Adopt a Park. We were not approved the first time we filled out this application. The city attorney, Amy, sent an email to Heather from Phil Carwatt's office letting us know that the application was denied because of several factors that we were not aware of that needed to be part of that application. What needs to be followed, we are currently looking at what needs to be followed to submit that application again. We had a couple questions in terms of was the regulations or qualifications for Adopt a Park in place when the Heritage Association revitalized Rosa Parks. Thank you.
Our final speaker tonight is Mark Oberschmidt.
Thank you. Good to see you all, City Council. My name is Mark Oberschmidt, and I live at 404 South Granger. And I'm here tonight, once again, because of tax cap coming up on the November ballot. The reasoning for lifting the tax cap, as far as I'm concerned, is flawed. The main impetus for lifting the tax cap is to provide more police. I'm going to beat a dead horse again. You've heard this before. The crime rate is down in Saginaw, along with the fact response time in the city is 20% faster than the national average for a city of our size. We are in the spot we're in because of fiscal irresponsibility. The legacy costs of the past are a burden to all Saginaw residents. Most of the tax money collected goes to paying for bad financial decisions with these legacy costs. I know some of you were on city council when Darnell Early was given lifetime retirement insurance, only to have him leave a few months later. I don't think many of us could quite figure that out to this day, but it's certainly an expensive lesson. We have an upper-level fire department retiree who, by virtue of being able to work overtime to pump his retirement, collects $105,000 a year. Every 8 years, that amounts to $1 million we pay one person in legacy costs. How did this ever happen? Does that still go on with the police and fire department? Are we to expect more of the same? As you know, I feel that more police will not raise the quality of life in Saginaw. Until you can tell me a tax cap lift will go to our parks, our trees, our sidewalk repair, neighborhood support, I can't get behind it. We no longer have no Keep Saginaw Beautiful committee anymore. No one seems to be interested in that. We don't pick up our leaves in the fall out of the gutter, I know because of costs, but it just looks terrible. I don't think there's ever been a single fine assessed as that was a program, as if people that didn't rake their leaves would be fined, but that is just an ongoing problem. Last but not least, I feel it's disconnect with city council responses to the citizens who come to the council meetings. I've come here a number of times before to talk quality of life issues, and you respond with answers like how you worry about losing our state police. That type of disconnect. At this point, I don't feel comfortable or confident handing you the checkbook by removing the tax cap. Thank you.
This is remarks of council.
And we are going to begin with Mr. John Milne tonight.
I'm going to mention something really quickly because I'm sure some of the other council members may also. I wanted to thank Saginaw Future for the economic development tour we took last week. Very informational. We visited a number of sites in the city, and I just want to say I can hardly wait for the public opening of the SVRC marketplace. I think everyone's going to be really wowed by that one. It's supposed to open later this month, and they are working every day to get that on schedule. I also thought it was a great team building exercise because all of our city department heads attended, the manager, and it was very good interaction for the council members and the Saginaw Future staff with everyone involved. You see all the connections that happen between our work and the private sector when you go on one of these tours. I wanted to be one of the first to offer congratulations to Veronica Horn. She's going to be the next CEO of the Saginaw Chamber of Commerce. She will be succeeding our friend Bob Vandeventer when he retires at the end of July. And the Saginaw Chamber represents Saginaw business, civic groups, and individuals, and they've done so for somewhere close to how long the YMCA has been in existence. I'm not sure the exact number of years. Something I've seen get rolled out very well this summer is the Saginaw Celebrates Summer. Way too detailed, the number of things happening. All I can say is there's something to do nearly every day in every neighborhood in Saginaw as part of Saginaw Celebrates Summer. If you can't find something that you're interested in, it's not because someone isn't trying to provide opportunities for you this summer. And Houghton Jones Neighborhood Association is having their taco fundraiser this Friday. I have lost my slip with the exact time on that, but it's a very good organization, and they've been, I think we just celebrated their 25th year that they've been in existence. So something good to get behind. And that's my comments. I will pass.
Thank you very much, sir. I don't have a lot to say this evening. I would like to, maybe a question for the manager, maybe he can answer later. I wondered if do we have any county parks in the city of Saginaw? I know county people in the city pay for parks in the county, so maybe we can get them to help fund Wicks Park. I mean, it seems like it'd be a logical thing to do. Maybe you can give me some feedback on that. I did meet the owner of the Outback restaurant yesterday, and come to find out he's a Saginaw student, Saginaw High student, and a Saginaw resident. His name is Mr. Hayes, and he owned Outback. So I told him I'd mention it at the city council meeting so we can go out there and support him. And as I was there, a young lady that was in our chambers 2 years ago that went to Saginaw High School, she was a hostess. I can't remember her name, but she goes to Florida A&M, and she's going to be a very important person one day, she told me. So she's coming back to our city. So it's good to know that the people of Saginaw is moving up and taking some ownership. So other than that, I don't have much to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to say thanks to Steve Meyer for all his hard work with the YMCA, and congratulations to them on 150 years. Actually, quite a bit of congratulations because we've had some really successful events in the city. Congratulations to Brian Leckel and his team with the second annual Row Run Ride. They had great attendance. And I also wanted to extend my congratulations to Mystic Way of Saginaw. They won the PTAC Small Business Award from the state of Michigan, so that was absolutely phenomenal. Had an opportunity to walk in the Memorial Day Parade and attend some of the events later on at the Veterans Memorial Ceremony. That was great, but it was, unlike today, it was very, very warm. But it was great to meet with our citizens and talk with them about some of the needs, things that they'd like to see in our city. Also want to extend my thanks to Consumers Energy. Although Beautification Day is over, I was contacted rather late last night, and they will be sending a contribution of $250 for us to go back again and spruce up the 6 areas that we were able to take care of this Beautification Day. So that was great news. And finally, I just want to extend my congratulations to Vargas and Son. Maybe we could get them a proclamation. They're celebrating 50 years of business in the city of Saginaw. That's a great thing. But I'm looking forward to the management's update, and I see Zach Brannigan in the back with the brand new hat on. So that's all I have.
Good afternoon. I'd like to thank everyone who came tonight, also our public speakers. As always, it's always good to see Ms. Deb, Mr. Is he gone? And for Mr. Mark, I'm sure that everybody has their opinion, and I'm sure that we can work on trying to convince you to work with us on this one. I'd like to thank the Chambers, and I'd also like to thank Michael Webster. Out of all of the time I've been on council, which has been going on 5 years, this is the first time I've actually seen a county commissioner join forces with city council. And I truly would like to thank him for that. The tour was phenomenal. If you have not walked down Old Town, if you have not been down to the farmer's market, just to walk around, it is phenomenal. A lot of questions got answered. I hate that we didn't have more council people there, but I understand we had to work. I was lucky I could take off for work. But in terms of going through the city, Saginaw is poised for a comeback. If you look at what we're doing and listen to our tour guides, we're getting ready to do a whole lot of great things in this city. And I'm telling the citizens now, hold on, because you're in for a big surprise. If you think we're coming back now, just keep on waiting, because we're growing by the rapids. Thank you.
And Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, everyone. I do want to thank Ms. Malconian for everything you and the Go High Initiative and the volunteers are doing. It's good to hear Wicks Park has a chance to be revitalized. It's going to be quite a project, and we are aware of that. So it's good to see that there are those working on it, so thank you. I have to say thanks to my wife since she's here too, and if I don't, I'll be in trouble, but she's part of that as well. So I did want to, unfortunately, Mr. Oberschmidt has left, but I do want to respond. He suggests that the only reason for lifting the tax cap were it to happen. First of all, it's not the city initiating this effort. It is citizens who have decided that it has been long enough that the city has been punished, and that's probably the right word, for the misdeeds of 30 to 40 years ago, of, as Mr. Oberschmidt is talking about, misdeeds. Those are long in the past. The city has done tremendous things since then to reduce and avoid legacy costs in the future, to avoid those kinds of events or activities that have cost us money. What we are needing now are monies for basic services. That's what any increase in funds from the tax cap would go to, not just police or fire. They are needed for the police and fire, yes, but all services are needed throughout the city, whether it's trimming trees or fixing street potholes. All of those are desperate needs, and the tax cap has caused an awful lot of harm to the city to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars in the last 40 years. Lifting the tax cap is needed desperately for our city to move forward. I do want to mention the fire department is now again doing its fire ops program. So all of those members of council or staff who haven't had an opportunity to participate, the chief is inviting you. I'm going to give it a try. Chief has assured me that he can accommodate my bad knees, so we'll see. But I'm going to give it a try. I also want to mention, following up on Mr. Myers, there is going to be a ribbon cutting in the new home for the Boys and Girls Club on June 20th, and the public is welcome. So it is quite a nice, a great event to have that facility reopened and to have the Boys and Girls Club back in Saginaw. The economic development tour, I do have to also give, appreciation for staff and the people who created or set it up. It was really a tremendous tour. Seeing the improvements in the city and the things that are happening is really heartening. Life and look good to see that we are moving forward on many fronts throughout the city, both residential, economically, and with residents moving in. There's a lot of good things happening. I had the pleasure of representing the mayor, the city, and council at the presentation of a certificate of recognition at the retirement of the music minister at First Presbyterian just yesterday. It was a great event, and he assures us that he's going to stick around. He's quite a volunteer in the Saginaw area, so we don't want to lose him. So thank you, Mr. Mayor, for the opportunity to do so. Finally, I do want to follow up on something mentioned by Councilman Milne. Saginaw Celebrate Summer is available for anybody who would like to see all the events that are happening in the city. Probably well over 100 events this summer in the city. So again, as Mr. Milne was saying, something to the effect of, if you say there's nothing to do in Saginaw, you are wrong. You could do something every day of the week, every day of the summer, and not do everything. There's a lot of activities, a lot of good things going on. Please join the city of Saginaw and its citizens as we celebrate the summer. With that, Mr. Mayor, I think I am done. Thank you.
Okay. I want to go over everything 2 or 3 times, but sometimes you just need to do that. Certainly want to publicly acknowledge the appointment of Veronica Horn as CEO. She has worked diligently for years with the chamber, and for her to take that step up, I think it's going to be a great thing, and we won't see much of a change at first because she's been part of the system all along, and so I think that's a great opportunity. Deb Marconian, thank you so much for your report today. I know time was short. Anytime you want to email council members with any of the information, please feel free to do that. Thank you for working with the Wicks Park, or I think it's called Southeast Neighborhood Association. Thank you for working with them and getting them to the where they're at now. And I know you'll continue to work with all the neighborhood associations, and we just can't thank the associations enough. That's a big part of our foundation here in our community, is all our neighborhood associations, active neighborhood associations. There's just a tremendous amount to do that. Appreciate that. I certainly enjoyed the tour from Saginaw Futures. I learned a lot on that tour. It's the second time I have visited the Menards location. The first time is when they first opened it, right after they first opened it, and to go back this week was, I'm not sure if that's the same place. It's huge. It's just, they've expanded so much, and I was so impressed, 100 plus employees that they have there. Well, I think when we first took our tour, there was maybe a dozen, and boy, for that to be long. And thank you for our county commissioner for joining us, and hopefully we're gonna in the future be able to fill that bus with many. Certainly, I was a little hesitant on the tour when we talked about Central Michigan University and their discussion about we'll look at the cadavers and get a chance to see how they interact with those. Not my high priority, but come to find out those are, I refer to them as mannequins, but to see those created, we had a baby there, and we also had a couple other adult ones, and this woman is an actor acting as the mother as they're being evaluating this doctor student, and to have that baby there and to watch and see that baby's chest rise and go down, and then to see the baby's fingers move, it was a little spooky, because I know that's not, but it was so real, and for those doctor students over there, to have the state-of-the-art technology they have at Central Michigan that at our campus here at Covenant is so much more advanced than their campus in Mount Pleasant. Although they're very good there, but since the campus, the one in Mount Pleasant, of course, 5 years down the road how much technology comes up, and to be able to have that newest stuff here was just amazing. And I'm so excited about the SVRC building. All the people who are investing, I know SVRC invested in that building, but to have all the businesses now investing in their own little shops and their booths and their restaurants in there, that's a lot of people investing in Saginaw, and we certainly are so excited about that. Open house for the YMCA next Wednesday from 9 to 6. You can go over there and take a look at that, and they have some free classes and activities going on, so please take a look at the Y. If you haven't seen the Y lately, you haven't seen it. You need to get over there and take a look at that beautiful facility. Also, next week, June 13th, kicks off the 2018 season of Light Up the City. We're excited about that. Consumers Energy, MMR, and there's so many sponsors. The kickoff is on Ojibwe Island, and that will take place at 5:30. These are all on Wednesdays. Every Wednesday we start walking the neighborhoods the following week. We start walking the neighborhoods. We have the Arthur Eddy Academy neighborhood, the Thompson Middle School neighborhood, followed by Weber School, the Covenant Healthcare area, Emerson Elementary, followed by Merrill Park, Betts Memorial Park out there, Saginaw Career Complex neighborhood, and then back to Ojibwe Island on August 22nd for their community celebration. So Light Up the City, if you've never participated in that, what a great experience. Walk the neighborhoods with our local officers, our state officers, our fire department is very active in there, and it's great to see people and actually go up and talk to them. It's a wonderful opportunity. And with that, I believe I probably missed 2 or 3 things, but whatever I have missed, our manager's going to fill in for us. So.
Yes, and we are at manager's report.
So first I just wanted to mention that you all have a memo that I put together from the items that the department head sent to me. Councilman Humphreys requested that at the last meeting. So this was something that, when we have personal appearances that talk about costs. I wish that they would come to all the meetings and hear about those items that we have done to save money and reduce costs. And those are just a few of the items listed. We have not had anyone that has been placed in the pension plan since the early 2000s. And we do not have retiree health care since 2009. Anyone after 2009 does not have that. So those are long since resolved, and with other items, we've saved millions of dollars in the city in the last 9 years. So if you get a chance to look at that, if you have any questions, just let me know. There is one county park in the city. It's Borchard Park by the courthouse. However, the county park system is working with us on a number of projects. They're contributing $105,000 to the Ojibwe Island project. That's about a $450,000 project. Brian Leckel, since becoming the director of the county parks, has been very active in the city. They've purchased 40 bike racks to be placed throughout the city. Brian coordinates the Roll, Ride, and Run event, which grew from the first year to the second year, and they're expecting it to grow again. He also coordinates home runs for headstones, which is another special event that the parks do in the city, and proceeds from that event do go to city cemeteries. So they're doing a lot. We did have an update from Brian. It's probably been at least maybe 2 years now, but we could ask him to come back, because if you recall at the time, he also presented statistics for how many city residents do use the county parks outside of the city. They do keep track of that, so maybe we can have Brian come back, or at least get some of those statistics for council members to review again. I'd thank Saginaw Future as well for putting together the economic development tour. They worked on that for a while, and especially Tom Miller and Cassie Miller put together a lot of that, and Tom I think was one of the main planners for that, and just the diversity of the types of businesses that we got to see. We got to see manufacturing, we got to see high-tech education at the medical school, residential and commercial and office space development. As the mayor said, Menards has over 100 employees now. They also have an automated facility, and it is I believe it's also a transfer station for other Menards products to move through the area, so that's kind of what generated additional jobs there. I'll also mention that I saw, so if you're talking to people in the community who are looking for jobs, there is a sign there by the door. If any of you saw it, they need truck drivers. So they're always hiring truck drivers at Menards. And the School of Medicine was phenomenal. I think that's a multi-million-dollar learning facility there, and those that got to see it, I think you got to see that they spent that money very well in training physicians. The individual that we did get to see was mentioned that we saw him doing an evaluation in there. He is a CMU College of Medicine graduate who is placed at Covenant Hospital, and that is the goal of the university, is to keep physicians in the area. The condo development that the Shaheen family is doing there, the riverfront condos, Pete Shaheen mentioned that in the last 30 years prior to building those condos, there were 10 homes in the city of Saginaw that sold for $200,000 or more. They've sold over 20 for over $200,000 in the last 2 years. So that was pretty phenomenal with that development. And then finally, SVRC is a great development. That's over $20 million development. We got to see the Spence Brothers' new offices, the SVRC administrative offices, the CMURC, and all of the small businesses on the first floor. I think that was really phenomenal to see, although I think it was about 95 degrees in there. So, but I think it will be open in about around June 20th, June 22nd or so, so everyone will get an opportunity to see that. So I thank Tom again for planning that, and I think it also shows the diversity that Saginaw Future has changed. When they started, probably over 20, 25 years ago, that was all manufacturing, but the economy's changed, and now they work on a pretty strong variety of projects. I don't think in the past, and and Tom could probably tell you, they wouldn't have probably worked on a project like SVRC or the condominiums, but they've refocused, so I give them credit for doing that too. They work on pretty much anything that I ask them to work on, whether it's real estate or education. They were involved in the CMU project. So I also mentioned that we do talk about jobs a lot. I mentioned the sign posting that was at Menards for truck drivers, and at the Saginaw Future Board meeting, MMR mentioned that they foresee a strong need for paramedics in the next 2 years, and they are probably looking at hiring over 50 paramedics. So there's another field that I think is growing, and we'll have a need that that our residents could look into and could get. MMR is expanding their facility on Washington to do that training in-house, so there could be opportunities there too. So spread the word on that. And with that, we have some presentations this evening. So first, we have an update from Zach Brandigan, the Executive Director for Saginaw Land Basin Conservancy. They have a number of projects in the city, so we'll see which ones he wants to focus on. And Zach?
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Tim. I have a short video that I want to show you guys. I'll give you a brief introduction. This is just a couple-minute video. You know that we do a lot of that, photography and videos and stuff, try to document the work that we're doing because we're a nonprofit and we're always looking to fundraise, and telling the story really helps. We are extremely busy in the city of Saginaw, but I'm going to let you take a look at this first, and then I'll fill you in on some of the things you saw. And I don't know, I'm just going to enjoy being in Saginaw and wearing a shirt, with buttons and not being covered in debris and filth from dragging brush off these lots. So here, we'll take a look at this video and then I'll be right back with you. You can take a longer look at that on our Facebook page, and it'll be on our website, and that if you want to see it in more detail. But I just want to do a quick thing. It's pictures usually speak louder than words, and you can see that we've had a lot of people out there, a lot of volunteers, staff. We've created some new jobs, and we've been really working our tails off there. We have a lot of help. The city has been great and has really stepped up and came out and cleared up a lot of those brush piles and collected them for us off the street. I mean, they were, I think, bigger and more, a little bit more voluminous than everybody expected. We really worked hard and pulled a lot of stuff off a lot of these lots. If you're not familiar with what we're doing, the Pollinator Project, we're doing 450 vacant lots. It equates to about 75 acres each year, this year and the next couple, and we've already done about 50. So we'll be doing altogether about 1,500 lots in the city, which is half of the land bank's vacant lots in the community. And we go in and we clear them of all the brush, debris, and the tall grass, mow them down. We treat them, and then we use agricultural techniques to plant a low-growing ground cover that consists of 12 different plants and has a much higher success rate than monocultures of clover and other things. So I'm not going to promise you that they look like a golf course, but they're going to be significantly better, and we are making lots and lots of friends in the neighborhoods. And we're really getting a lot of residential help, people stepping up, mowing the lots after we've cleaned them up, helping us clean things up, and all kinds of things. Volunteer nights that we've had really good crowds showing up to give us a hand, and we're out there pretty much every day, 4 or 5 days a week. So that's going very well, and we're probably at about 50 acres of vacant lots already addressed this year, with about 25 more to go. We'll be making our way over to the west side. We've only done a handful of lots on the west side with volunteers, but we'll be making our way over there in the next couple weeks. The areas of concentration this year were the northeast area. We did quite a bit up there. And then we did, we're in the middle of the Cathedral District right now. And then, like I said, there's a neighborhood on the west side we'll be working in. And we'll be rotating those over the next few years. And we'll basically be able to address all corners of the community as we go. And I see no reason why this needs to stop even after 3 years. This has become something that has taken on a life of its own, and the philanthropic community is interested in continuing to support us. And even though it is, takes a lot to raise the energy and the money to put this together, we have raised 3 years of funding for this. So we're really cooking with gas now, and we're looking for other future opportunities. It's allowed me to bring on one more staff member and then hire 2 young men from here in the community as staff members for the summer. You saw both of them in there. We worked temporarily with a crew from an organization called Seeds. They did local hiring, and some of you might know Rob Brown from First Rate Community Center. He was their crew leader, and Rob has become a great friend and a good asset of the organization. We hired 4 guys from here in town, and so we had those 5, and then Trevor and myself, a crew of 7. Now that the Seeds crew is done with that, we hired 2 of the young men on that crew to be SBLC staff members. So it's nice. We created a few jobs this year, too. And they may have a long-term future with us as well. So that's going very well. The Pollinator Project is very hard work, as you can see, but without the city and everybody else pitching in, with the city and everybody else pitching in, it's going along. A couple other quick things to bring to your attention, too. You saw Janet Nash Riverfront Preserve in there, and you can see that we've planted about 500,000 to 1 million flowers on that site, and they are growing. If you've driven by there, it's green and orange and bright colors coming up, so I'm pretty excited. Our success rate with the flowers and the land cover out there is really high, so I didn't know what to expect. That fill came from all over the place. We put over 6,000 yards of material back into that site when we did the finished grading last year. A lot of you were there at the ribbon cutting, and I thank you for that. So we're just looking out for the long-term future of that site now. I know there's some iterations of talking about a memorandum of understanding between all the partners to make sure that site's taken care of, but I can tell you, no matter what, no matter when something like that happens, we're not going anywhere, and we're there daily, driving by that place, taking a look at stuff, just making sure it's in good nick. And people are actually just showing up out there and picking up trash themselves. There's a guy that's going out there every day at like 5:30 in the morning, walking the pathway and picking up whatever he sees out there. And, so if you see that guy out there, say thank you. So I don't know, I'm excited about that. We're doing a couple other things. We were on the Davenport site by Scientific Break during the Spring into Service Day the other day. We let up that site, and we're going to be continuing to work with that site after the road restoration project on Davenport. Then we're going to be helping to convert that site to something better. We took off a few dumpsters worth of junk out there. We've taken off probably 8 giant roll-off dumpsters of material. That's about 50 to 60 pickup trucks load of junk so far, and we're just working hard doing that all over town. So that site's going to get a major improvement as well by the end of this year. And the last current thing I would say that's out there is that we're working with the Saginaw Art Museum to do a restoration project on a small patch of land that's right behind the garden there. If you've been in the backyard of the Art Museum, there's that little triangle of land it was just kind of blighted and run down and big trees overgrown out there. We're working with the Art Museum on that project, and if you go back there even now, you wouldn't recognize it. We took out a lot of the big trees, and we took out all the junk and rubbish. Our contractor, our builder is out there working on creating a water feature out of the low spot out there, and Trevor and I will be doing a rain garden restoration back there, new deck and other things, and the Art Museum has been great for that. So that's going to be nice. It's kind of a low point in that neighborhood, and now we can actually create a natural amenity and take advantage of that, and then also build on the strengths that the Art Museum has, and they don't have to look at that. We're also creating a new security feature with putting in a 7-foot tall privacy fence around the back of that yard, and that, so it's going to keep deer and critters out and kind of help maintain it in the long term. But they've been really good. And we are always looking for other project opportunities. There are many, many requests in the hopper. You know, our organization is strong, and we're working as hard as we can. I'm in Saginaw pretty much 4 to 5 days a week now, and that's about it. You will find no stronger advocate for the community than the Land Conservancy, and me in particular. For somebody who doesn't live here, you know, I live in Bay City. I sure do love this community, and I'm a bulldog to stand up for it. So you have an asset and an ally in us, and I don't know. If you have any questions or anything like that, I'd be happy to answer them for you.
Question, Michael.
First of all, thank you very much, Zachary.
Sure.
And if you would like to become the resident city of Saginaw, I'm sure we can help find you a
Okay,
spot.
yeah, well.
When you clean up the lots, I noticed after the house has been taken down, and some of them had fence lines, and there's a lot of bushes and trees growing up on the fence line. Do you see that as a hazard to selling the property or fixing it up, or what?
Yeah, I mean, we do the best that we can when we're on those lots. If they're land bank lots and they're ones we're working on, we try to get back there. You know, our method is to do as much as we can with the resources we have in a timeline that, you know, fits. I mean, you could send literally weeks on some of these lots, you know, just taking them back down to a totally maintained level. That said, you know, we try to get the most obnoxious things out of there. We have taken out lots and lots of chain link fence. Especially, I like to take out all the chain link fence that divides lots coming towards the street, especially because one of our main objectives is opening the sight lines back up and reducing the height of the vegetation to improve safety and connectivity between neighborhoods. Personally, we kind of see this project not so much as a conservation project, although we're creating habitat for pollinators. We really see it as sort of a social equity exercise. You know, we're trying to find opportunities to reconnect neighborhoods where, you know, if you're one house left on a street and you were isolated because of 7-foot tall weeds, you know, now it's wide open again. You can see your neighbors and interact with them. So it's, you know, it's part of our objective to try to clear that stuff out as much as we can. I think that many of the lots that we work on, if there's anything remaining, it might be that back tree line if there's some there. And most of the time, those trees are too mature for us to take care of. You know, we do have tree service allies, but it can be as much as $1,000 to take one mature tree out. So we try to get as much as we can. I don't think that we're, you know, leaving conditions that are going to create, you know, much of an impediment if somebody wanted to purchase those lots or move on. In fact, a handful of lots that we've cleaned up have been, you know, the land bank is starting to get people pursuing acquisition of those lots. So the answer, I guess, is that we're doing the best that we can, and I think we're leaving conditions that are moving it in the right direction.
Thanks again.
Oh, sure.
You worked in an area that I had a real concern with, the green zone. And you were over there and you cleaned up some lots. And it really looked so much better. Made me feel like I was almost back in home. But I just want to thank you. I just want to
thank you.
just give you a hand. Because without people like you and your group, we've had citizens who come to us to ask us to do what you're doing. And I'm thankful that you're here, and I'm sure the rest of the council members are as well as the citizens. So I just want to thank you for all that you do for us.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. It's our pleasure. It's our job, and it's what we like doing. So.
Maybe 2 years ago,
Probably.
giving us a little bit of an update to the whole council. But since that time, we've had the privilege to work on a couple different things, and really, man, you guys are just absolutely fabulous. And I tell you, that video will tug at your heartstrings, man, when you see some of these properties and you're like, well, this person used to live here, this family used to live there, and you guys are just really inserting new life. And I just want to tell you that we love you guys. Thank you so much for everything you do. Anytime that I call or have a crazy ask of you, you always somehow seem to make it happen. So thank you so much for everything you guys do, you and Trevor and the entire staff.
It's our It's what we like to do. Yeah, those lots in the northeast area were a bear, some of them, but you know, it's right now everything. Oh, right now everything is kind of in a transition where you know, weed killer's been sprayed on a lot of it. It's dying off. We're doing the final cut. We're going to be planting in the northeast area. So if any of that grass is growing back up like that tall, it'll be knocked back down again in the next week or two and planted, and then that planting takes everything over. So I'm really encouraged to see. We're going to have probably about 50 million flowers planted in Saginaw by the time we're done with this thing. But yeah, I mean, to Clint's point, we are always available for things, and I Phil and, you know, John and the staff and you know, and Saginaw Futures and that know that. We get calls and, you know, hey, maybe this is something we could work on. You know, we're trying to find ways. I'm trying to find ways ultimately to move the direction in a strategic, you know, way where we would be able to have a permanent physical presence in Saginaw with like an office and a permanent Saginaw employee and all that. And that may be on the horizon in the next year or two. So I'll keep you updated.
Extend our appreciation to your wife as well.
Oh, yeah,
You
sure.
guys are both
yeah.
big advocates of the region, so thanks.
Yeah, no problem.
Go ahead.
The foundations, you had questions about how things were going to grow and fill in and everything like that. We're now in year 2 or 3.
Yeah.
Are you comfortable? Are you happy with how the lots are performing?
Yeah, I would say in probably about 75% of the cases, you know, the first couple of years, the first year we did just 15, you know, just to test things out and see how they were going to do. Because we really didn't know. We tried actually 10 different approaches to doing this, different times a year, different seasons, different materials, different techniques. And out of that arose one technique that we really liked. And last year, we used that technique on the majority of the lots that we did. And a lot of those are coming back gangbusters this year. It's that technique takes a long time to go, which is basically a dormant seed planting in the fall, and you don't see any real growth until this year. So now I've been monitoring the lots, and unfortunately, we had a bizarre long winter and kind of a weird dry section of spring there, which is not great if you're a flower farmer, you know. But that being said, you know, a lot of those lots are doing pretty well. We go back, though, and we have the resources and we have the schedule to go back and retreat, redo, you know, and monitor any of the sites that we've done already. So this is definitely not like a one-and-done approach. There's a good number of them that I want to redo that are on my hit list because we further evolved the process to what we're doing this year, which is we had originally done a taller mix of more robust wildflowers. However, you know, when they're not blooming, they're still about that tall. And there's a lot of public education required with that approach. And also it's more vulnerable to, like, if something happens to it or it's mowed or something, it takes a whole other year to come back. The lower growing technique that we had, we consulted with the University of Minnesota, who does these things called flowering lawns. They create pollinator habitat that's no taller than 6 inches. And that's what we're doing now. So the stuff that we're planting, you're still going to have the occasional weed shoot up. I'm not going to say you're not. However, this is a very fast-growing mix of 6 different fescue grasses, fine fescue grasses, which don't grow tall. They kind of fall over. They're soft grasses. That's what's in the periphery of Janet Nash. And you'll see if you go out there, it's bright green and doing well. And then the other stuff is all creeping flowers, like creeping thyme and things like that are going to stay low and really choke out any tall invasive weeds that are going to come in, and hopefully even choke out like maple saplings and stuff. That's another big thing, is if you leave these lots go, I can tell you, they fill up with a bunch of little trees. So every time we do this, every 6 months, we're reassessing, we're finding what works the best. And I would imagine by the 5th year we do this, it will maybe even be a little bit different than it is now, but it's getting better every time because we have a track record of doing this. And I can tell you 10 years from now, you know, it's going to be incredible. I will tell you that Saginaw has gotten attention from, like, the Detroit vacant land organizations, and the Detroit Land Bank has expressed an interest through partners of ours to say, can we come up and see what they're doing in Saginaw with this? And there's interest from the Genesee County Land Bank and then coming up to see how we're dealing with this issue here. So we're only at the very beginning of this. We're doing our best, and we're finding the ones that work the best. So our most state-of-the-art technique is what we're going back and reapplying on ones that maybe didn't work out from the pilot sites and all that. So, you know, that's what I tell everybody, is that all of these lots are in a constant state of monitoring and a constant state of growth, and we are going to be always looking over them. It might take a few months for us to get back. We are only a staff of 4 permanent and 2 temporary part-time, and only 4 of us, including me and Trevor. You saw me and Trevor in there, and then our 2 field staff. We're the guys out there doing it. So yeah, if you ever see one of these lots and you say like, boy, that doesn't look right or something, you can contact us. I can come out and take a look, you know, whatever it might be. Our best interest is that it looks the best and it makes the best positive impression on the city and its residents.
Thank you.
Do you recruit volunteers to assist with any of this?
We do constantly. And if anybody is interested in volunteering, our website has information on that. We use our Facebook feed for that. You do not have to be on Facebook to go to our Facebook page. It's just facebook.com/Saginaw Land. If you just Google Saginaw Land Conservancy or Saginaw Land, usually we're one of the top things that come up. And we're always putting events out there, usually about 2 to 3 weeks in advance. So week before last, we had 3 volunteer events, one evening, one Saturday, one Wednesday morning. All of them had like, you know, 10 to 15 people show up and give us a hand. And we'll find a particularly difficult problem where many hands would make light work. And there you go. So yeah, especially with the lot cleanups and clearing the brush and everything, volunteers are extremely valuable.
In fact, would that same website that you're talking about be used for citizens or businesses who are interested in contributing financially? Because this is a nonprofit
Yes.
group. Same search will lead us in the right direction to make that.
Yeah. Thank you for providing an opportunity for me to mention that, Mayor. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you can actually our main website. Anybody can go there. It's saginawland.org. It's one word. We'll get you to our main homepage, and there is a donate click on the top.
Yes.
And you can designate funds specifically for the pollinator project or for Saginaw work, whatever it might be. And absolutely. And I will say, you saw a lot of the sponsors at the end of that. The philanthropic community inside the city of Saginaw, Saginaw businesses, if I had half an hour to tell you about the amazing stories of people like Mr. Garber and these other businesses that have stepped up and contributed $15,000 to $30,000 each to make sure that we have 3 years of funding for this. The Saginaw Community Foundation, the land bank itself, the in-kind resources from the Saginaw GIS Authority, from the city, from the county parks group. I mean, it's amazing, you know, so yeah, it's incredible. And certainly if anybody wants to contribute, I will say that our Saginaw donor base is growing without any active solicitation of it. People in Saginaw are stepping up and helping make this work.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Well, thank you very much, Zach.
Sure.
Appreciate that.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
You bet.
Thank you, Zach, and it's great to hear from Zach. They're always doing new projects as well. So the second presentation, I think we're going to have Tom or Yolanda introduce. Tom?
Good evening, Mayor Browning, Mayor Pro Tem Clark, City Council, and Manager Morales. I'm Tom Miller with Saginaw Future, the economic development agency for the City of Saginaw. As you are aware, the City of Saginaw has been engaged in the state's Redevelopment Ready program for a couple of years. The program measures and then certifies communities that integrate transparency, predictability, and efficiency into their daily development practices. The RRC certification is a formal recognition that the community has a vision for the future and the fundamental practices in place to get there. To be vibrant and competitive, Michigan communities must be ready for development. This involves planning for new investment and reinvestment, identifying assets and opportunities, and focusing on limited resources. Certified redevelopment ready communities attract and retain business, offer superior customer service, and have a streamlined development approval process, making pertinent information available around the clock for anyone to view. Part of the RRC process calls for each community to develop an economic development strategy. Saginaw Future has worked with the University of Michigan for some time through their Office of Community Engagement. Last year we were made aware of an opportunity to work with the Office of Defense Manufacturing Assistance Program, or DMAP. They offer assistance to communities that have been adversely impacted by the downturn in defense spending. We immediately identified the need to engage with a consultant to assist the city in developing an economic development strategy. A small committee comprised of City of Saginaw staff, Saginaw Future, and the U of M staff met, developed an RFP, and chose a consultant. This study was completely paid for by the DMAT program, and we're very thankful to the team and the University of Michigan for assisting us in this effort. I'd also like to thank our committee led by Yolanda Jones, Jeff Klapsick, John Stemple, Cassie Miller from our office, and I'd also like to thank the city manager for his leadership and participation in the process. Lupke and Associates, who was chosen as our consultant, has done a phenomenal job working with our committee and community stakeholders to help develop a plan for the city. Their group provided an amazing amount of research on the city and the local economy. We don't have time to go through all of the data tonight, but it will be available for your review. And now I'd like to bring Diane Lupke up to give us a brief overview of the project. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Mayor, members of council, thank you for the opportunity to speak with you tonight. We've really enjoyed being in your city. It's been great to work with the city manager and with Ms. Jones and Saginaw Future. We really have enjoyed it. My name's Diane Lupke. I'm president of Diane Lupke and Associates. My team with me, Quentin Davis and Andrew Johansson, and they're going to be available to help me out and answer questions as we move forward. I do want to mention also that the work was part of the grant from the University of Michigan Defense Manufacturing Assistance Program, and in fact, Carmen Wells-Quigg is here representing the university tonight, so I want to introduce her to you if you have not had an opportunity to meet her. She's been fantastic in helping us and supporting us through this process and with the city. So the purpose of the engagement was to examine all of the great planning work that's been done within the region. You have some really terrific plans you've been doing. You have lots of investments that have been made throughout the region. But what you have not had are things that are really specific to the city, and how the city can implement some of the larger things that you've been doing, and how it can most benefit within the city limits and within your own citizens specifically. The process that we followed to ensure that we were including more information specifically about you, but taking advantage of the economy of the region as you must. So first what we did is an overall assessment. So we took all of that information from existing plans, strategies, all the great work that's been done, all the money that's been invested. We looked at all of that information, looked at the region, and what we were trying to figure out is what's your place in the region? Where do you add value? Where does Saginaw, the city of Saginaw, where do you add value economically to the region? That's a really important point, because that's how you begin to distinguish yourself. That's how you become a good partner. Give us the clues that we need to see where you can go to be more competitive. So we looked at all that information. Then we added a tremendous amount of additional data to what was available. So we were looking at more data both from the region and specifically for Saginaw. We also looked at housing, commercial markets, innovation specifically, what pieces here in Saginaw again can help support you going forward. And we did some labor shed analysis and some business surveys. Secondly, we take all of this information, we do what's called a situation analysis, and we look at the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats of your region. We look at the regional context again, looking for your value position and some opportunities that exist. The third piece is the strategic economic development plan. And so we have the focus that we'll talk about briefly tonight, and then we have an action plan for you and some priorities to show how to support that over time. We had a whole series of findings as we looked at tremendous, as I mentioned, a tremendous amount of data. But just in kind of a summary, this is not new to you, but it's helpful to reiterate it, that there's this double whammy that took place for Saginaw, and that was the great transformation of the manufacturing industry at the same time coupled with the recession. And those two things were economically devastating to this community and to many others. So they dramatically reduced the number and the size of businesses and your overall population. In fact, one of the numbers that we found was that 40% of your buying power, you lost 40% of your buying power, which is a tremendous amount. That's a huge change in your economic position. The second thing is that through the loss of those businesses and population, what happens then is that your linkages are lost. There's a fraction of these connections as businesses move out, as people move out following other jobs. You lose those connections, and this disconnection continues to undermine the economic activity that used to bolster each other. All those individual things leverage each other. Now those things are separate. And when they're separate, you get the impact of that individual investment, but you don't get the impact of the connection that supports greater economic activity. So that's a key problem. The third thing is that despite all of this, we saw real possibilities. We saw opportunities. We saw potential for growth. The places where we saw the most potential were really in three areas. And what we're looking for is not only concentrations of activity, but we look for connections in that activity. So wherever, the things that we found were manufacturing, a big concentration in manufacturing, in regional food and food products, and in health and health technology. So we found these three things. Again, not necessarily things that you might not know already, but we looked at those three things, feel confident in those three areas, and what we looked for then is, where does manufacturing and food come together? Where does manufacturing and health come together? Where does food and health come together? So we were looking for those connections because those economic connections will help you to leverage that activity to get the most out of each investment and the most gain for your citizens out of those investments. We looked at, as I mentioned, a tremendous amount of data. In fact, at one point in one of our presentations, we had over 86 different data points that we shared with Ms. Jones and with Saginaw Future. We're not going to go over all those tonight. In fact, we're going to give you just a tiny little snippet of some of the data that we've been showing folks. And this particular section is where once we saw manufacturing, food, and healthcare, what we were trying to do then is, again, drill down into that data specifically to look at where you're adding value. So the first piece here is simply looking at occupations. So here what we're looking at is skill level. So the skills that your population has within the community. So all of these occupations are high levels of concentration within this community in healthcare. The second thing that we're looking at is employees. So previously we were looking at skills, now we're looking at employees, the people who are employed in healthcare. And each of these bubble rings, the more intense the color, the larger the bubble, the more employees you have in a particular area. And again, we're looking at healthcare here. This next piece, we're looking at healthcare and manufacturing. Remember, we're looking for connections. And so we're looking at the connections here between healthcare and manufacturing. And each of these codes, food, textile, apparel, all indicate high concentrations of activity in manufacturing. Here again, with the bubble, with this bubble chart, the larger bubbles, the more intense color, indicate concentrations of activity in manufacturing, played out over the map here. And that's Saginaw in that spot there, of course. This piece looks at employees, and again, we're looking at concentration of employees in manufacturing. This one looks specifically at medical equipment and supplies manufacturing. So again, that connection between manufacturing and specific healthcare equipment and supplies. This looks at a series of different businesses in medical manufacturing. So are these particularly high-level employment businesses?
Yeah, we actually found that, case study that comes to mind is Warsaw, Indiana. They're the orthopedic manufacturing center, not just for the Midwest country, but also international. And so we started to say,
Yeah.
Really what we're trying to do is figure out what kind of clustering opportunities there are here in Saginaw. So we go from the industry, and as Diane's bringing you along, we get into the subsector analysis. And here we actually saw an opportunity for 10.
Great, thank you, thank you. The same piece here is we're looking at employees here, that concentration of employees in medical manufacturing. And finally, I think this is we're looking at food and beverage manufacturing. So now looking at the connection between manufacturing and food. This is employees then. The same kind of diagram we just showed you in terms of healthcare and manufacturing. Now we're looking at that connection between food and beverage manufacturing. This is a slightly different slide, and there are two slides here that I think are really important data points that I want you to remember, and that is that you have 40,000 healthcare and manufacturing workers in Saginaw County. That is an amazing concentration of skill. Think of it in terms not just of employment, but think of it as your asset, your skill base. So 40,000 healthcare and manufacturing workers in Saginaw County. There's a lot you can do with that. This slide is a little tricky to look at, but what's important about this slide is that what's on the left-hand side of the slide shows the people commuting in, and on the right-hand side are the people commuting out. Usually in a distressed or emerging economy, you have a deficit, pretty significant deficit of folks commuting out. In this case, you've got 20,000 people who are commuting into this community. Again, that alone as a statistic is something that you can work with.
And that was the inflow, outflow, and so you've got 3,000 people that live here and work here. You have a net of 10,000.
Okay, so where did that take us? What we were looking for, after we found that concentration, after we found manufacturing, healthcare, and food, and we drilled down into various pieces of data, much more than what we showed you. But what we were looking for then were what are the things that have potential to be transformative. And so we were thinking back into all that had happened here. We thought back through all the data, where we saw some connections, and we really found that there were three things that were critical. And the first of those were linkages, and reestablishing the linkages that had been lost here. Because supporting those connections, whether those are geographic or social or economic, are all going to be supportive and cause a greater impact economically. So the first of those categories, or what we consider to be key issues, would be linkages. Recreate and reinforce geographic, economic, and interpersonal linkages. So linkages is the first of those things. The second of those is what's going to be a game changer. What's going to be a game changer for you? What's going to be transformative is innovation and focusing on innovation. So looking for those things that are really going to make a difference. Recognize and maximize existing economic opportunities for growth, innovation, and job and wealth creation. We're looking for those things that will really change what's happening here. The third, or accelerate what's already going on. That's innovation. The third of those things is talent. Your major asset within any community are those folks who live here, your talent. We already talked a bit about concentrations of talent that you have here, but really it's everybody, and getting the full, ensuring that everyone can have a full life, and that you are able to gain as a community from that talent and skill developed to its potential. So reestablish the workforce pipeline among businesses, educational institutions, and emerging and established workforce. So those are the three issues that we feel you need to focus on, and that would have the greatest impact for you. Just to briefly go over each of these pieces, When we talked about linkages, we talked about those in 3 different ways. And the first of those ways is to look at reconnecting the linkages physically within the community. Remember, we talked about the existing existing businesses being there still. I mean, they are there, they're driving the economy, it's all important. What's happened is that they're disconnected, mostly disconnected. What we want you to do is try to reconnect those things on a physical basis. One easy way to do that is to name your area in terms of healthcare a healthcare corridor. And so in this case we called and to put actually a trolley connecting that route. So connecting educational institutions to those major employment centers and potentially other areas as well. So that healthcare corridor, we called it in the plan, we called it the Health Link connector with a trolley. And we used as an example for you the Cleveland Health Tech Corridor, which is really an amazing long-term story of connecting all of their health assets. Secondly, we looked at geographic linkages with other public-private transit. And so that might connect some of your other important entertainment amenities within the community. So all those things that you saw today, you might want to connect those things. The Old Town and downtown, Old Town and downtown, and other entertainment venues, because that's another place where you also have an advantage, because you are bringing in folks for both retail and restaurants. So that's that second piece that we wanted you to consider here. The third piece that we thought you might consider is a community development corporation. The reason why we want you to consider this is because we feel you need partners. It's always important to broaden the base of who is engaged in the development activity. And one way to do that is to create a complementary legal structure that has the opportunity and the tax preferences to allow it to legally engage in development activity, and that would be a community development corporation. You already have a dormant corporation here. It's possible that you might be able to reinvigorate that existing 501c3 or potentially create another one. We gave you as an example the Riverside Development Corporation in Toledo, Ohio, that was a CDC started within a hospital, Riverside Hospital, and thought they might be a good example for you to think about how you might have this CDC within your healthcare corridor. The second piece was innovation again, and we felt that you should look at recognizing and maximizing your existing economic opportunities for growth, innovation, job, and wealth creation. Okay. So the first thing that we felt would be really helpful for you is to, and I'm certain you've already done this to a certain extent, and that is looking at your supply chain, value chain. And that is taking all of the businesses that you have and seeing how they're connected through their suppliers, their customers and suppliers. When you do that mapping of customers and suppliers, what presents itself are opportunities. You see places where there are gaps in the chain. Where there are gaps in the chain, those are opportunities, where you could have local businesses, individual businesses to potentially shorten that supply chain by getting more business locally rather than going to China or another community around the country. So mining that supply chain for opportunities for existing business. That helps support your existing businesses. And that second action actually looks at entrepreneurship, because there's some things that existing business cannot do, and there's an opportunity for entrepreneurship. So we'd encourage you to do those two things. The third is look at innovation in terms of housing. And that would be to ramp up that housing renovation that you're doing. We know you've got difficulty with housing values here. You have a very affordable housing index, and that makes it difficult to support renovation. We tried to come up with a few strategies that would allow you to do this on a nonprofit basis. That's another reason for the CDC. do this on an entrepreneurship, self-employment basis that allows you to support more renovation and more activity than you would be on a for-profit basis. Also, it allows you to use resources from the federal government and from nonprofit sources for training purposes. If you encourage those, again, layering funding as well as layering economic activity, you're more likely to be able to be successful from a financial perspective with that housing renovation. The third item is talent. And what we're suggesting here is to reestablish the workforce pipeline among businesses, educational institutions, and emerging and established workforce. So looking again at your biggest asset, which is talent. First of these 4 actions looks at the career path and making that career path as transparent as possible. So what we like to do here, and what that first picture is showing, is a group in California did a career pathways map. So imagine the entire room covered with paper, and they're looking at each job from an entry level. How can people enter this job? What's the next job they can get to? What does that skill allow them? What does that skill allow? Where does that skill allow them to go? What skill does that transfer to? What's the first job? What's the next job? What kind of investment in education might they make to go to the next job? So mapping out a career pathway from the first level, it can start with that first entry-level job all the way up to a PhD. So they mapped out all of those jobs, all of the education that's required, and the both the investment that you need to make as well as the kind of salaries that you could command afterward. So that's what a career map, career pathways map could be. So we encourage you to put that together. It's not something that the city does, but is something that your businesses, educational institutions, facilitated by the city would do. Secondly, look at talent linkages through cooperative degrees. One of the things that is really making a difference in various places around the country to make high school more relevant to folks is to find the things that they are most interested in and allow there to be both high school and associate's degrees coincident. And so while someone is going through high school, they're taking the coursework that would be needed for the career that they're interested in and gaining that associate's degree at the exact same time. So you get a high school degree, an associate's degree, and often at the same time you have an internship or some employment activity in that concentration as well. That's been a really successful program in a lot of places around the country. If you've not explored that, that's one thing that we thought would be a pretty easy win for you and one that has a real impact. Thirdly, we would encourage more education and industry partnerships. In my hometown in Indiana, there is a company called Sweetwater Sound. It's a fascinating business that puts together sound equipment for all the major bands as well as your local choir. And they are working with a local college, St. Francis University of St. Francis, and they've put together a partnership that enables the company to help advise curriculum, provides interns to the community, interns to the company, and has allowed them to turn around an import of 400 new employees to actually getting them directly through this new program that they set up. So it's almost a guaranteed job for folks who are going through this program. So we encourage this education industry partnership. It's a win-win for the communities as well as for the companies. The fourth piece is about youth entrepreneurship. And real change takes a generation. So you have to think about that. We all want change to happen fast. We all want things to move in a time that we can see. But in fact, real change takes a generation. And it starts in youth. So when you can incorporate entrepreneurship into education, you're really changing how folks think and and how they think about the opportunities that they have for work, for starting a business, for self-employment, for moving in and out as modern work requires. So those are the three things that we think that you should focus on, because we believe those things would be transformational for you and for the community. Finally, let me give you some quick recommendations. For so many communities, no matter how great the plan is or how poor, it's very hard. It's very hard to get started. And so we think it's helpful in terms of your approach to implementation to think big, to start small, and to act fast. Think big, start small, act fast. It's talked about as the zoom in, zoom out approach to implementation. And what it is that you look at that long view. You look at the long view, but you break it down into projects that you can see right in front of you. So small projects, and we've tried to do that in the action plan, is identify those small projects that are going to be quick wins for you. Things that you can begin doing immediately, will not require huge resources, but things that you can do immediately. And you can begin to get your footing, learn a bit, see how this is going to work, and then begin to gain a competitive advantage from that, and then encourage others to join you in that effort and broaden the base of development participants. So that's the first recommendation that we have for you, to think big, to start small and act fast. The second is that investing in local schools. Remember that I said that change takes a generation. So investing in your schools and making that a priority is really critical for change to happen and for it to be sustainable. Thirdly, reestablish those healthcare corridor linkages. This is again something that you can do fairly easily without a major investment, and it recognizes the economic activity that already is in existence and supports it through these linkages and with the recognition of both the brand and a trolley. Fourth, the Community Development Corporation. Again, it's about partnerships. It's about broadening who's engaged in development and where the money comes from, and making sure that you're using all the dollars that you have access to. The fifth item is supply chain mapping. These are things that are right in front of you, but are often not aware of, and the businesses are not aware of either. So these are opportunities that are already out there, that are existing, that are created by your own businesses, and can be taken advantage of by local businesses, as well as creating opportunities for entrepreneurs. And finally is that entrepreneurship piece. Often people leave that entrepreneurship piece till the end. We encourage you not to do that. We encourage you to introduce it in young grades, early grades in school. As you probably heard, 2/3 of all jobs are created by small businesses. If you drill down into that number, it's entrepreneurship, it's second stage, high growth businesses. Anytime you can introduce that idea of entrepreneurship, it's going to be helpful to you. In closing, on behalf of my team, I really thank you again for the opportunity to work here. We have enjoyed being here. It was a challenge, I have to say. It was a challenge, but we really did see opportunities here, and we were pleased to be able to bring some of the data and support to the community. Again, I urge you to think big. There are opportunities here. Start small, kick it off, and act fast. Thanks very much. We are here available for questions.
Councilman Humphrey.
With the focus on education, there's no component in this report, maybe it's somewhere in a bigger report, that takes into account secondary education. SVSU, Delta soon to have, it's got Ricker, but it's soon to have the downtown campus. We've got Ross, we've got CMU Medical School, significant employers and definitely big partners in the region, but they're not in here anywhere. Is there a reason for that? Is it somewhere else, or?
It is. It's in the big document. Sometimes we say K-16, When I use the phrase K-16, that means kindergarten through college, actually. So through a 4-year college. So we very much appreciate the tremendous importance of those investments from Central Michigan, from Saginaw Valley State, and from Delta College. I believe there's another medical training college here as well.
Ross is here.
Yeah, Ross. So we do appreciate all the investment that all those institutions are making. Yeah, they are included. It's a big report. What did we miss? I'm sorry. Perhaps I missed your point, Councilman.
Well, it just seems to me that we're focusing on manufacturing, big, heavy emphasis on healthcare, but we're not doing anything to necessarily integrate them into this whole process. If I understand the whole linkage thing with transit, what we're talking about is at least transportation-wise, linking up the hospitals. And I'm presuming we're talking Covenant, VA, St. Mary's, and maybe other healthcare facilities too, so that you can schedule multiple appointments in one day. And having done the whole Cleveland Clinic thing last summer, you know, I understand what it's like to get on a shuttle and run from one end of the neighborhood to the far end of the neighborhood. I mean, is that what you're talking about in linkages? And then my point being this, it seems to me that it would behoove us to really work on the linkages that we would have with our schools and connecting them up with employment opportunities in the city itself.
That is precisely our first, that is our first recommendation, that you connect first the educational institutions and the employers. So it is intended specifically to go between the major employment hubs and the educational institutions. So that's the primary purpose. The secondary purpose would be for others, but it was primarily a business to business, business to education, institution to education to business kind of linkage.
So it sounds like it's in there. We didn't get orange circles for the educational
Didn't get an
institutions.
orange circle for education. We'll remedy that. More orange circles.
Okay. It's interesting to see how it all kind of fits together. And
it does fit together. It's fascinating, actually.
Well, it was kind of interesting. The one thing that caught my eye was the heavy metal bus tour. And you actually have to Google that. You know, you just go to events, you get the current events at Mississippi State. No, Memphis, whatever.
Mid-state.
That's a fascinating idea.
Yeah.
You know, you load a bunch of kids on a bus and you take them to the manufacturing facility. You know, you too could have this job earning X amount of dollars with this union wage.
People don't recognize what manufacturing is today. First, that it's clean, and secondly, that it's still a good job. It's a different job, but it's still a good job. And it's that bus tour. We talk about it always in terms of kids, and that's what everybody does. But almost everybody who's doing a similar kind of bus tour is ensuring that parents go too. Parents and teachers who often are discouraging about manufacturing occupations.
Go ahead, Dan.
A couple different questions. First one, I want to focus on the commuting slide, which shows a large inflow of employees into the city of Saginaw.
Do you want me to back up to that slide?
It might help. There we go.
I'm sorry, it's not clearer.
Is this supported by, for instance, Saginaw's income tax filings? Do we show this many people filing income tax forms, and that we can say, wow, we really benefit from a lot of people who don't live in our city coming into the city and paying income tax? Secondly, do we have a almost 15,000 person workforce in a city that is right now about 48,000 people?
Yeah, that's pretty impressive. They have a tool, Yeah, they have a
Okay.
tool that allows you to do this kind of mapping. And so it takes, this is actually a statistic that you can recreate, probably either Yolanda or Tom would already have access to a tool like this, yes.
And do we have comparisons to similar cities in Michigan, especially someone else who has a local income tax? Do we have a comparison to a Kalamazoo or a Grand Rapids? Or you mentioned how
Yeah.
often cities in our position have a negative flow,
Right.
more people
Right.
leaving for work than coming in. So I'm just wondering if we have some comparisons
We
available.
do
there.
have a lot of comparisons. There's a section of the report on innovation. And so we do have a lot of comparisons with, I believe we used Toledo, Kalamazoo, Dayton, and there was one, maybe South Bend, there was another community as well that we
Okay.
looked at. I don't know whether we have a commuting pattern one, but we might be able to get that data.
Okay.
We can look for that.
One of the points you showed was Saginaw as a retail and restaurant draw. Does that mean the city or Saginaw County?
Well, it means I recognize some of the restaurants, I mean, some of the retail options are outside the city.
Okay,
The
so this may
restaurants
be
are
a,
inside the city primarily
Some.
that we were talking about, yeah. Some of
okay,
them were.
some of that is regional then,
Yeah.
not Saginaw
Yeah.
City specific. Okay. Some of the suggestions about the supply chain,
Mhm.
do we have specific parameters on how suppliers site, for instance, warehouses or supply operations? At one time, Saginaw was a very large distribution center, but with the advent of the interstate highway system, you can have a much farther south in the state of Michigan location. You can reach the whole state in a one-day drive back and forth to the warehouse. So I'm wondering how easily we can access supply chain possibilities.
The process that I like to use, although there are other ways that you can do this, the process that I like to use is actually called self-mapping, where you encourage all the manufacturers to actually identify their suppliers. Now, you can get that information, but what happens when you have suppliers in the room and you have all these businesses in the room, they almost immediately see opportunities. There's almost always, in every time I've talked to folks, there's almost always a situation where there's a business here that is getting product from the next state or in some cases overseas. And there's somebody in that room who supplies a component that they need. So that's why we encourage you to do this kind of self-mapping rather than to use some of the big data opportunities. But you can always do it that way.
Since this study comes through Saginaw Future, will some of this information be being presented through them to other components here, manufacturers, other business groups?
You'll have to ask Saginaw Future. I don't know.
So if we want it to be more widely disseminated, we might want to do that. Okay. That's all.
Any other council members? Thank you so much. Great
You're
presentation.
very welcome.
Thank you.
It was our pleasure.
There's another document that goes along with the PowerPoint that you
Report coming. Yep. It's coming. It's coming.
Thank you.
And that concludes the management update.
Thank you.
We knew U of M was in the house when we saw Tim.
Well, we're just finishing up our managers. Any other questions?
One quick question. It appears everything went well with the generator cut in this weekend. Phil, how'd that go?
Oh, I guess it went good. I didn't hear, when I don't hear anything, things go fine.
All right, thank you, thank you. All right,
Mayor, you're now at consent agenda.
and I am pleased to announce that the agenda has been available at City Hall and on the city's website and on SGTV 191. Need a motion to approve the consent agenda, leaving room for exceptions. It's been moved and supported. Are there any exceptions? Are there any exceptions? Being none, all in favor signify by aye. Those opposed, motion carries.
Mayor, we are at reports from boards, commissions, and committees, and appointment of board and commission members.
Does any board member have any verbal report that they want to do from the boards? You did receive recently an update from all the other boards and commissions. You have those, so make sure you do take a look at those so you understand what's happening in the boards and commissions that are operating here in the city. Councilman Clint Bryant, did you have one? Oh, you were just, okay. Oh, I thought you had a comment. Okay. Being none, we have approval then. We need approval of 3 mayoral appointments.
Move all 3 to be approved.
Support.
Been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Being none, all in favor signify by aye. Those opposed, motion carries.
Next is resolutions, and we have one this evening. It's approving the Michigan Department of Transportation cost agreement for bridge rehabilitation work.
Need a motion to adopt.
Support.
Been moved. Is any further discussion? Any further discussion? Being none, all in favor signify by aye. Those opposed, motion carries.
Motions and miscellaneous business.
Any council members have any business? And Mayor Pro Tem Floyd Clark.
Yes, I think one of the things that got mentioned 2 or 3 times in the course of the meeting were the idea of jobs. I believe we still have some vacancies for our summer jobs. Is that right? I believe we certainly we need to mention that there are summer jobs available through the city of Saginaw, part-time, and I think also full-time, but temporary. So if anyone has need of a job, or if they know someone who does, please apply to the city. It's on the website. I'm sure the clerk's office could help if you don't have a website available. These are often good introductory jobs to better jobs. If you get good recommendation as a result of this employment, it's a great step up for future employment. So many of our staff have gone through some of this process, and it's been very effective. So please, if you know anyone, or if you're looking for a job, apply.
Any other business? Being none? Been moved and supported. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by aye. Those opposed, we're adjourned.